4 people, bro. Look at that.
Oh, the shame and the excitement.
Mhm.
Okay, we got some heads too. Let's see what we can do.
So let's see what happens. I like that. The shame and the excitement.
So, Uncle Moonwa, we got 4 folks in the waiting room.
Okay. Oh, I have an audience. Okay.
This may be who we end up with, so we may have the chance to go very deep and intimate.
All right. And what is today's session about, by the way, just out of curiosity?
I mean, you wrote us a
Oh, I
pretty
did.
serious description, my brother.
The dragon has awakened.
I yes, Bruce said that to me last night. He said, the dragon has awakened, you know. I said, okay, Bruce, show me the way.
Show me the way.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
did you get the link that Ellen just sent you?
I don't think so.
She sent you Stolen Ground.
Okay, beautiful.
So I was
That's
gonna,
the film series, yeah.
yeah. I just eventually we're going to be, because that's getting real famous right now. I mean, all around the country, and we just put it up for them. What I'd like to do is to later on just show about half of it for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Would that be okay, guys?
Whatever you want. This is your session. We're
Okay.
so excited to follow you.
You have capability to just hit the link and show it?
Yeah, I can pull it up and show it. Just let me know when you want me to do that.
Okay, good. Because I want to talk to folks for the beginning first, okay?
Yeah, and would you like us to intro you? Do you want to kind of do the welcome?
Yeah. Why don't you introduce me? That'd be cool.
Okay, beautiful. Okay.
I was hoping the title would have drawn more people.
I know.
Must be the little dragons that came.
These are the big dragons.
The big dragons.
They took up so much space that
Asians always call ourselves little dragons. Secretly, we're big dragons, but we expand into crises.
Okay. Anything else you want us to know before we start the session?
Well, I'm gonna go. When I go like this, that means to laugh at my jokes. Okay.
Got you.
Got it. We got that.
So if you start it off, the whole rest of the audience will get that it's a joke.
For sure. We'll be your laugh track.
Remember my laugh track.
Okay.
You bring out the worst in me, I tell you.
Give thanks. It's a good worst. It's a good worst. Oh, thank you so much for being here.
Okay, it's good being here with you too.
I don't see the. Okay, here we go. Boom, boom. Welcome, Mama Lisa, Uncle Don B.
Lisa, your mom.
Jayhan, Chris Darby.
I haven't seen your mom for a while. I bump into her once in a while. Lisa, how nice. Oh, what a treat. Wow. I kept thinking, I know that person.
Welcome, welcome, beautiful peoples.
Yeah. I know you and I bump into it. I think the last time was Berkeley Bowl. Yeah, I think that was the last time.
Yeah, all kinds of places.
Where are you located right now, Lisa?
In Fruitvale.
Fruitvale.
Yep.
The area in Oakland.
Yes.
Oh, Fruitvale and what?
Oh no, just the area.
Okay.
East 15th and 42nd.
Because my father's restaurant was at Foothill and Fruitvale.
Oh, wow.
And that used to be, most people don't know in Oakland, was where all the rich white folks lived. It was kind of like upper middle class white folks. And then in 1950 something, they went around telling people, oh, the black people are coming. You're going to lose your property value. So they sold like hell and went up to the Oakland Hills. And then overnight, the whole area became, I think it probably got better once the people of color moved in. I'm not too sure. But I think that
it's very much still that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I've been down there. Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. And I could tell that Uncle Don B has been framed. Okay. Okay. And hello, Chris. Chris, you sound familiar. Do I know? Have I met you before, Chris?
Chris Darby.
Lisa, I'm not sure. I've been in Amani and them's orbit for some years, so there's definitely a chance our paths have crossed. But it's good to be here today.
All right.
Yeah, Chris Darby is a fellow dream guide. He'll be teaching next moon cycle, and we've been rocking together
Okay.
through Mosaic Project and other things for more
Yeah,
than a
I
decade
feel
now.
like I've heard your name before. In good circles, Chris.
Y'all both Berkeley folks too, so
That's
you know,
right.
there's always the possibility of crossing in like at a grocery store.
Yeah.
Yes. And Jahan?
Jehan.
Jahan?
Yes. Hey, hello, hello.
Is that the real background that you're in right now?
This is the real background that I'm in a dance studio right now.
Oh, I was just thinking, boy, he has a hell of a beautiful home. What space? Oh, it's a dance studio,
Yeah, temporary home right now.
huh? Uh-huh. Which means, do you dance?
I do dance. Yes.
Yeah, you look like a dancer.
Mhm.
Got the necklace to start you off, so it looks cool.
Jehan is part of the student body and will be potentially offering some of that dance as the
Oh,
decolonial praxis
Oh, great.
with Amutabi.
Uh-huh. Oh, wonderful.
Mhm.
And Uncle, you want me to call you Uncle Don? That sounds so affectionate.
That's what pretty much everybody calls me. It's a poetry reading name. And in Flagstaff, I took it here with me from Los Angeles. And most people know me as that. If you're not comfortable, you can call me Don or call me Hey You.
No, I think that Uncle Don is already stuck. It's too late. It's affectionate sound.
Okay, I'm used to it. I like it.
Good. And hello, Lisa, again here. Lisa is Amani's mother. Probably many of you already know that, but
Mhm.
I think one of the most fondest moments I had was going camping, and when Joaquin and Amani and were so small. I still have some pictures of that. It was very sweet. And by the way, everyone, the only time I ever wrote a stage play, is Lisa and got to see it. The one and only time I did one. Do you remember that, Lisa?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it was one on my mother's murder and my journey, and it was this solo performance I did. And but there's a part that you might have forgotten, Lisa, was that I asked you to help me, and what it was you were to go like this with your throat as I was getting close to the time. And what happened was you rubbed your neck way before my time on my plane. And I kept going, damn, that really went fast. And I started wrapping up the plane real quickly.
No.
I just remember laughing. And when we wrapped up, we had like 25 minutes left or something like this. And so this one, I never quite told you that because I didn't want to embarrass you, but I
Oh
thought it
my
was.
goodness.
And I think what it was is
I probably did it unconsciously.
Yeah, you did.
You
Yeah.
gotta pick a symbol that you are not gonna do on accident.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is ask you, why are you here? I think it's an important question, isn't it? Like, why are you here? I don't know how many times I do workshops around the country and someone says, I was forced to come. I didn't really want to come, or I wanted to get off work today. So we've come for all different reasons, and it might be a way for us to get to know each other. So why don't we start off with you, Lisa, since we started with you already, why are you here today?
Well, I'm here for the whole 13 moons because of these amazing young men in my life, Mani and Amutabi, and Jehan and other Lucas, and I'm very blessed to have these wonderful men, and look forward to getting to know you some again, Chris. And of course to hear from you. It's been, quite a while since I stood up there to, can't even remember what I read, but for your first film, Stolen Land, is that what it was?
Stolen Ground, yes.
Stolen Ground. Yeah.
God, that seems so long ago. By the way, everybody, I never went to film school. The Stolen Ground was just simply filming my Asian men's group. And I was just so amazed at the reception to it. And yeah. And it's really all around the country right now. People are just really excited about it. But when it first came out, it was mostly the Asian community. And then it was kind of a joke. The other guy who had helped me, my editor, he had never been an editor. I said, well, I've never been a director or done a film. And so he learned as he could. And then I said, why don't you come do this next film with me called The Color of Fear? And he said, nah, I'm going to film school. And he was an architect at the time. So he went on to become a real filmmaker. And then I went on to continue my lack of understanding or my lack of skills and went on to do The Color of Fear, which then changed my life. And it was so funny how at a crossroads, I thought he would be the filmmaker and I would continue being a teacher. So it was never my dream or desire to be a filmmaker. It was just ended up that way. Yeah. Like a lot of other things, huh, Lisa? It kind of leads you to another direction. Yeah. And Uncle Don, I'm really liking saying that. Uncle Don, why did you come today?
That's a different question than why am I here?
Oh yeah. Why are you? Well, I'm gathering that you're a really good listener. Because what and why?
Sounded interesting. I'm here to be surprised and to learn things.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. And how about for you, John?
Yes. So I'm here as a part of the student body for this trimester in decolonization for dreamers. And I'm here as a student. I work with young folks in Oakland, and I feel like I keep my work with the young folks in mind when I'm in a lot of spaces as well. So I'm here to learn. And I also saw a bit of your film, I believe called The Color of Fear.
Uh-huh.
And it really moved me and struck a deep chord. So that also drew me to the space today.
Mm. What about The Color of Fear that drew you?
Well, the image that comes to mind is the men's circle, that scene, or one of the scenes of the men's circle, and just the deep honesty and vulnerability and rawness of the sharing.
And what is your ethnicity, Jahan?
Well, I come from Iranian ancestry and Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry.
So when you watched that film, what part of you related to the film? Do you remember?
I feel like I think the part of me that feels both in opposition towards two sides of me in opposition to each other, and then the longing for honesty and connection.
Yeah. So the rest of you who are listening, one of the more recent, the past 2 or 3 years, I've been really looking at when people share what they've left out. Can you hear that, everyone? What they've left out of it's a section what I call noticing what's missing. And so as Jahan was talking just now, what did he not say? What did he not say? Anyone? What did he not say? Because Jean said a lot, didn't he? What didn't he say, particularly toward the end?
Deep feelings.
His feelings. Is that what you said, Lisa? His feelings about what?
What it means to be Iranian in this crazy country.
Good. So he didn't share what it's like. And what did he do with his hands, everyone?
Mm.
What did he say? What was he saying when he used his hands like this?
He was talking about the parts of himself in opposition, and so he was like demonstrating part of that, like that conflict, the
Yeah.
hitting of those parts together, which I imagine were sparked when watching the color of fear, the like that
So,
oppositional like energy.
yeah. Which really came from when I asked him what part of you related or what part touched you. However, in there, he didn't tell us what was in opposition, did he? He didn't say what was in opposing. What is that part? So we might be all imagining what that would be like. Like, what is he trying to say? So we could either make it up, or what could we do? If we wanted to find out what he meant, what could we do?
Which
You could ask him, right?
mhm.
You could ask him, what is opposing? What are that parts of yours that are opposing? Now, I want you also to think about is that perhaps maybe even for Amutabi, is that he paid attention to that part because that struck him too. And then maybe for Alisa, Iranian, what is that? What is it like to be an Iranian in this country? Since we're always seems to be at war in opposition to Iranians and Iran itself. So what's it like to be there? What part of him got stimulated when he saw the color of fear? What part reminded him of his own life? A lot of questions there, huh? Aren't there, Jahan? So maybe we could start with that one when you said in opposition. Say more. What parts were you talking about of yourself? Could you identify what those are? And as Lisa said, how it feels to have them be in opposition and how it affects you?
Well, I think when I saw what I experienced in that circle as like a confrontation um, of this Black man really speaking to his experience to this white man um, and being really truthful and honest in that. I think I was mostly, honestly, just in witness to their experience and moved by his honesty and moved by the honesty that he was bringing forward into that circle. And for me, I think personally, when you ask me personally, I think a feeling of, you know, having the Ashkenazi Jewish white assimilated white ancestry and then the Iranian ancestry. Like I felt since early on that I kind of have to choose sides. You know, that I either get to be Ashkenazi or I get to be Iranian, but it's sort of like one or the other.
Yeah, never both, huh?
And I think I feel it's less of a personal thing right now because it's not really, it's way beyond my own self. But you know, what's happening in Palestine right now is really upsetting in the human family domain, but then it also re-stimulates all of the you know, the sadness and the frustration and the anger of some of the conflicts that exist between the peoples that I come from.
Yeah. there's something I want to go back with you on, and I hope that all some of you are listening to really care, because part of what mindfulness is about is actually paying really close attention to his story. Because even as you were talking about, and by the way, the gentleman's name is, the black man is Victor Lewis, is the name of the black man. The other white guy is called David. And you said that the black man was really telling his truth. Okay. The part that you didn't finish up on, which I was wondering if you were going to, was the resistance of the white man. In fact, not only the resistance, but also in some ways attacking or blaming the black man for his own victimization.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, even as you're talking about Palestine and Israel right now, the debate that continues to go on in this country, and then also the duality of being a person of color and having your other side, both at each other, the Jewish side, the Iranian side. And I was just thinking, Amani also, we had talked with, one of your role plays about that duality. And then for Lisa, for you as a mother, knowing that one day that's exactly what Amani would have to look at, is that duality. And then perhaps even the dilemma that you talk about, Johan, is I feel like I have to choose, huh? And that's exactly what Barack Obama had to do. He was pulled by both worlds. And when he was running for the presidency of the United States, what they said is they didn't know if he was black enough, having to prove if you're Iranian enough, if you're Jewish enough, which side. Yeah. Not an easy place to be, and not always one that we talk about. It's what I call the middle stone. In time that we do talk about that. Yeah. Thank you. Got to know a little bit more about you in that way. Yeah. It's an unfinished conversation, isn't it, John? Yeah, one that's ongoing. Yeah. I remember when my son, he's adopted from Guatemala. And at one point, and I think you might or might not relate to this, Lisa, is that my son is Guatemalan, and we got to be 16. I asked him about racism. And he says, damn, Dad, happens every day. And just as he and I were talking about it, his mother, who is white, and she started walking out of the room. And Joaquin said, "What are you doing?" Because I need to put the wash away, and or the clothes away after she was washing them and then folding them. And he goes, "Why do you do that all the time?" He goes, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" She goes, and he went, "No, you always walk away when I want to talk about racism." And then, there's this huge struggle, battle of whether it was factual or not. And then eventually she broke down, and I just simply asked the same question I said to you, Lisa, is, have you been afraid of this day? That one day he would see you as white? And she just said, yeah, that I'm not his mother, and that he would see me as a white person that he has issues with because of racism. It was like this avoidance of talking about it. And finally it got out how painful, or however painful it was. And I think it's still painful today for adopted parents who aren't the biological parents to talk about it. Though I think that you were very lucky, Amani, to have grown up in a family where diversity was the profession and part of the whole family. But it's not always one that's talked out in society very well. Yeah. So, Chris, why are you here?
It's a Zoom Bomb Tuesday, so just pick a Zoom URL and just hop in.
Damn, did I get lucky?
Yeah, I kept the clothes on this time, but
I was really hoping that title would draw in all the martial arts and Bruce Lee fans, but not one single Asian in the group here. Okay, so we have an Iranian here. Okay, what does this work mean to you?
Referring to decolonization work.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why is that important to you?
It feels like a thread of a larger exploration around kind of how we can get right as a species, and if we are to persist, how that happens. And I feel like the question of colonialism on a species level and on a intercultural level, it provides a really rich microcosm for some of the questions of belonging and cooperation and history that will be part of some of the ingredients that will kind of determine what's up for our species in the days that come.
And what is your ethnicity, Chris?
I'm curious why you asked that.
Because I don't know.
Right on, but there are many things you don't know. You chose to ask that question.
Ethnicity is really important to me.
Why is that?
I think maybe underneath, Chris, is that I always wondered why people didn't ask me and just made an assumption that I was Japanese or Chinese, and that I could be Korean, I could be a whole lot of other ethnicities. And so that lack of curiosity has always bothered me. But it also made me feel awkward because I started to learn, well, if they didn't ask me, maybe it's not something that's important. Is there something I'm doing that they don't want to notice? So all these things when I was younger, I think what happens was when people don't answer you or don't ask you, it's like someone said, when the truth becomes too hard to bear, we create another one. So my truth was, maybe I'm not that important. Maybe I'm not white enough. Maybe I'm not American enough. Maybe I'm too poor. So that's why I ask it, because I'd like white people to learn how to ask that, and also to realize that I'm comfortable asking it. And also it's my connection to you too. Perhaps as a person of color to another one. I don't know, but I'd like to know that. So that's why I asked to get to know you more. Yes, Uncle Don.
I'm careful before I ask people questions like that, because I know some people of color who are absolutely offended by it. There's a couple of women, of course, their issue is that their ethnicity and their appearance is fetishized, and it's inextricably linked with their sexuality. So they are offended if somebody asks them, where did you come from? Why do you look so different than this ethnic group or that ethnic group? So I had to learn, especially with those people, to sit back and listen and let them reveal in their own time if they were ready to. So I've learned a little bit about Anna, and Gabby is a slam poet who used to live here in Flagstaff, and she's revealed a lot. Slam poets are natural storytellers with that sort of thing. So I didn't have to ask in her case. But that's a factor also.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little later on, where white people got the idea that to just listen, where they got that from, who they heard that from, that told them that. Because I oftentimes, a lot of my workshops, I often have whites sharing what you just shared, not necessarily about the ethnicity part, but so my job is just to listen. And what I've often said to them is, too bad, there goes our relationship. I didn't ask for you just to listen. I wanted to know what your thoughts are. I want to know your truths. So
there are some issues with that. I think
I just want to finish here just one moment, Uncle Don, is
Back to Chris.
is that it is possible that, I want to get back to Chris. It is very possible that you will offend somebody but the work is then the curiosity is tell me more why. Where did that happen?
In some,
Yeah. So I totally agree with you, Lisa. I'm trying to work my way back. So, Chris,
in some contexts, white people are encouraged to speak out all the time and to dominate everything,
yeah.
except in business.
So
In business, unless we're the person running the business, we're encouraged to be basically silent and to just do the bidding, because we are servants just like everybody who's not the boss in the business. So we've got that dichotomy, and it's difficult. We have to kind of listen to judge what the situation is. I was told once.
Don, I want to ask you a question. Did you hear what Lisa said?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think you did. She said, how about Chris? Because we had moved away from him. And
I did hear that.
Yeah.
And I figured we were getting back to that.
Yeah.
So it would be taken care of on its own. Yeah. Sorry, Chris.
No, I'll get down.
So I also appreciate what you said too, Uncle Don. So Chris, I had asked you what your ethnicity was, and I hope that we kind of long way around as to why it was important. So would you be open to sharing that?
I don't think so. I want to sit in this mystery a little bit. I kind of fuck with Uncle Don on the, like, for me, and when you asked Jahan, I like noticed something in me, because I found that being somewhat racially ambiguous, that's something that people want to know quickly, and it's interesting how this dynamic has played out, because it's often white people who want to know and will ask unabashedly, and it feels, as a student of history, and knowing how important racial categorization is in this country and to what ends it has been used, I usually don't, especially off top, just meeting people, like I don't want to be categorized in that way. And Rita Dev has a beautiful poem that ends, "If you can't be free, be a mystery." And so, yeah, I'm usually taken aback when people ask me that question without some context. And I should say, part of the reason that I came here was to check out the kind of the scene and the vibration, ahead of being a dream guide, because these beautiful Far Out brothers have invited me to participate. And so I think one thing that I'm coming in with is not a certainty about exactly what besides the understanding a little bit about your work and looking into it, Limumwa, and the title of the event, not knowing exactly where we're heading and what's going on with it. So especially in uncertain territory, don't want to be painted into a corner too quickly without knowing where I'm going.
Yeah. So one of the things I heard you say was that you're so easily categorized once you do share. And that's how many of you can relate to that? That once you do share any identification, you're categorized, or maybe even the stereotypes that go with that. Yeah, exactly. So when you saw Amitavi just do this, what were you saying to us, Amitavi?
They don't need to say anything.
What was that?
I don't need to say anything. I don't need to be asked. People
right.
There's enough assumption, enough history, enough like already present, and I'm dark enough that at that point if they asking, sometimes it's interesting, but more often than not, the assumption is they already know.
Yeah. So it wasn't, as you were talking, Chris, it wasn't just out of a vacuum that your experience is actually born out of your experiences. Yeah. And so many of us are. I was just thinking, what were some of the experiences that you had when you were categorized? What were some of those? And then how did they affect you? How did some of those categories affect you?
I think that there are narratives, and it's not just this country, but as a unit of analysis, I think it's useful. And as you use the word stereotypes, and I feel like, you know, those narratives and stereotypes flow and intermingle. And
what were some of those?
I'm trying to see if I can even name them without giving up my ethnicity.
Oh. By the way, I'm not trying to be sneaky.
No, it was and I'm just trying to be thorough here.
It was more out of curiosity. It wasn't, you know, because you said it. So just like each of us in this room, you could say I've had some really intense stereotypes and categories people put me into.
Yeah.
And sometimes we often think, well, I know what those are because those are mine too, but not necessarily. And because, you know, I think my first experience of you is how not only thoughtful you are, but also someone who has been hurt by those categories and the categorizations. And like one of the things I was just thinking about is just the stereotypes that I got. And then I tried to not be those, even though some of those were me. And that was a consequence of trying to maybe in a way outrun the stereotypes, which was exhausting. And that's why there's some part of me that can relate to you, that why to hold back on those because of all that happens the moment you do share. Yeah. What part of that is true for you?
Certainly the hurt by some of the stereotypes.
Yeah.
That resonates. And yeah, that piece.
Yeah. As Chris paused there just now, how many of you could feel he was feeling or back there? Raise your hand. Yeah. I think the same thing almost for Jahan when I asked you some questions, I saw you kind of pull back a little bit like here. And oftentimes we don't notice that pulling back because we go back there. We remember it because it's still part of us. And we are a consequence of the world around us that interact with us. I remember something that Hugh Vasquez did or maybe it was Victor Lewis. We were doing a workshop together, and one day it was one of the most profound exercise. I still can't forget it because it was so intense. He wrote down on the blackboard, on the board, Chris, all the beautiful things that were said about us when we were born. Beautiful, gorgeous eyes, kind, sweet, tender. And so pretty soon the whole board was filled because there was like maybe about 40, 50 people there. And then he said, I'd like you to share the things that people said to you later on in your life that hurt you. And for every one he had on the board, he scratched it out. And it was just, I mean, people were in tears, including myself. And I was thinking how bright I started out in life. And then slowly, one by one, in all the different ways, as one woman said, First Nation woman said yesterday, is what do I do with all those hurts? I just look down and keep working. And a Chinese American man said, I just look down And in my film, Stolen Ground, the Chinese man says, I just look down and hope that it goes away with enough education on my part. I get the job. And at one point, Chris, which was so painful because these men were in my 10 years with me in a men's group, Asian men's group. And he says, well, we were told by our parents, if we look down, if we show them that we're smart by getting, our degrees, by getting that real good job, by getting that high paying job, by marrying, by having kids, by having a house, we'll show them that we're good enough. And then even just as he's working up to the end, he's almost in tears. And the other Asian man says to him, all we are still to the white people in this country is we're just smart, educated chinks. And how that stays. A new survey just came out yesterday by this Asian group that says that white people trust Asian people to be doctors, even to be their friends, but they do not want them to be their bosses. They do not want them to be their in-laws. And with a doubt, don't want them to be the president of the United States. And that they view them as perpetual foreigners with the royalties to their homeland, but not the United States. How many of you can relate? Yeah. Yeah. I remember a Black woman once said at one of my workshops when in my film, If These Halls Could Talk, a white man said, okay, I'll be really honest to the Black student, Mark Thompson. All right, I'll be honest with you. I don't see you as a human being. Be powerful. And a Black woman who was watching it at the end said, I knew it existed. I just didn't want to hear it out loud. I just didn't want to hear it out loud. And I think as we're watching what's going on in the country today, we knew it existed. Can you hear that, everyone? We knew it existed. And maybe we as Asian people knew that this anti-Asian sentiment existed, or anti-Iranian, or anti-Black, or anti-woman. But it's so hard when you see it really played out. When that man just hit that Asian woman right in the eye with his fist. And I remember what she said was, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Or as this Asian woman who was an athlete in martial arts. I don't know if you heard about that. She was out in the park practicing. And a white man came by telling her to go back to where she came from, go back chink, which is almost always the one. And you know what she said, which I'll never forget? She said, well, first of all, I had never really experienced this so directly, though I saw it in their eyes. But that wasn't what hurt me the most. What hurt me the most was that nobody said anything. Is that nobody said anything. And I think now that I've gotten older, I think I now understand that look in my father's face. In the film, some of the men said, when they looked at their fathers, who experienced so much racism they couldn't get promoted, and someone said, oh, they were just tired. And then in each of the stories, each of the men said, no, I think they look beaten. They just look beaten down. And so also when I was listening to you, Chris, I was just thinking at one point, how wonderful it would be just to say your ethnicity and people see all the positive and beautiful attributes. How wonderful to have you be in the room and understand the journey that you take in your people, and then are also curious to learn more, your language, your traditions, your way of thinking, your way of moving, And today, when I was working with you, as I was going around the room, was I think in many ways I was perhaps wanting to relate to you in a way I always hope people would relate to me. Being curious, being moved, noticing what I was saying, what I was careful not to say, what I was holding back, noticing when I pull back, noticing the tremor in my voices at different times when I talk. And I think that is what mindfulness means to me, not just a way of doing it, but a way of the heart, of connecting to people. And even for me, Don, Uncle Don, I want to share with you that I want you to notice how easily it was for you, Lisa, or maybe not so easy to say, how about Chris? But you see, in my culture, we wouldn't do that. We would struggle to even just do that. How about Chris? But I so appreciated Lisa saying that. And I have a hunch maybe there's times that you get talked over and are invisible and can relate to what that feels like not to be seen and remembered. And when you interrupted or jumped in, Don, Uncle Don, it reminded me of how many times as an Asian man I paused and white folks would jump in and that they would never come back to me. No one remembered that I was the one who was talking. And so I was very touched that you remembered, Lisa. And also, but for me to say it to you, I want you to notice that after Lisa said it, and then I tried to go to Chris, and then you kept talking, Uncle Don, what I want you to notice is that how long it took for me to tell you that. I waited another minute or two for you to keep talking. I don't know if none of you notice how much energy it takes for me to break through my culture. Because what it normally would be is you don't embarrass somebody by interrupting them. You don't embarrass to stop them and say, you did something. And how this culture interprets it as being timid, non-assertive. But for me to interrupt you, Don, would have meant that I would be disrespectful, that I would be shaming my family. You don't have to nod your head because you see, that's how you may not want to see that, but I wanted you to understand. Because if you had noticed my face in the Asian culture, if you look at people's faces, you could tell that something is different, something has changed. What I noticed in this country, I remember once I was in Texas and a 6'5" guy, it seemed like in Texas, they seem to grow them on the average of 6'5". And he was talking to me right up against me. I mean, right looking down at me, just like, and then I remember thinking, doesn't he have any sense of space? And so I moved back one step. And what do you think he did, Chris? He moved one step forward. He didn't even read my body language. And one time I was at getting a check, to deposit, and a white guy came up and he took my space, about 3/4 of my space, to write his deposit check. And I was the one in line in front of the person. And I kept thinking, why doesn't he even see that I'm here? Why doesn't he notice me? And I didn't say anything. And neither did the woman at the desk. It was our culture that says that they're supposed to see you. They're supposed to respect you. And so I wanted to put a context to all of this. There's a context for you, Chris. Just because it's easier for other people to say their ethnicity doesn't mean that that's the right same context for you, that it's an important one, given your experiences. And for you, Don, I want you to hear what it took for me to tell you that. What it took me to interrupt you a couple times to do that. How hard that was for me. And not because I lacked this assertiveness, but because it was my culture. My name is Le Manoir, means my family name comes first. It's a metaphor. Our family comes first before us. How does it feel for you to hear this, Uncle Don?
Not unexpected. Sometimes it's difficult for me to just slow down. Sometimes it's difficult to just put aside things that I want to say so that there's space for others to say the things that they need to say. I don't feel threatened or anything like that. I'm not surprised at all by what you're telling me. And thank you for breaking through.
Yeah. And I did it partly because I don't know you, Uncle Don. But it's the only way. But it's the only way I can develop a way of trusting you again, is to tell you the truth and see how you would take it in, which I appreciate. Lisa, what was it like for you to say, Chris? How about Chris? What was it like when you said that out loud, and what did it remind you of as you had to do that? Because I noticed you said, when I said how many times it might be that you're invisible too.
I was first noticing that you had gone around to everybody and not Chris, and talking quite a while. So that's part of my, codependent nature, to make sure that everybody gets heard. I noticed that River came in, but she doesn't have her thing up. So make sure. And it's taken me many, many years, like, all my life, to be able to speak out. And I often don't like what I say and how I say it, because I still haven't learned a really graceful way to speak necessarily. So, yeah. And it was only because he was a white man that I did that. If he hadn't been white, I wouldn't have done it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what difference would that have made?
Um,
Can you see everyone? I wanted to ask, because I don't know. What's the difference if it was a person of color? What would hold you back?
Me? You're still asking me?
Yeah, I'm still asking you.
Okay.
Because Amani really wants to know. He's leaning a little bit more.
Amani knows.
Yes.
It's because I've learned that, just like I'm a white person who broke in, nobody else did. Of course, I have a history of being oppressed by white men, personally, as well as knowing the whole history of this entire country, and learning ever deeper how absolutely every part of our systems, every system, every rule, every law has come from white men. And there's a hierarchy within white men. But anyway, that's basically why, and we're here to learn how to decolonize. And
yeah, but I'm not so sure if you answered my question.
Okay.
Why would you not interrupt or
Okay.
point out to a person of color or a man of color?
because that's part of being white, is interrupting people of color. I interrupted you, you know, to help him not to interrupt your thing between you and Chris. So that was my white privilege that, you know, broke in to that, you know, trying to help this white man of privilege to not go off onto tangents to take more time away from you and Chris. So, and if it had been a person of color who had gone on and
Yes.
not allowed you to get back to Chris.
By the way, men of color are very capable of sexism.
I know that for sure.
Yes. I'm a
Definitely.
recovering sexist. There's no doubt about it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it just would have been more scary.
Yeah. And maybe there's some of the preconceived notions that because you're white. I remember Victor Lewis and I used to joke, he did this really sacrilege thing. We were, after we did a film showing, we just kind of played out how people walked up to us like we were gods because we were people of color. And we just both kind of laughed about it because it was kind of like they attributed so much to us that they didn't even know us, like what we were like. I remember once an audience said to me, "So what are you going to do after the workshop?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go back to my hotel and eat lots of meat and watch a really violent film." And they just went, "What? You're a Buddhist. You're supposed to be, I thought you were a Buddhist," and everything like this. And I said, "I'm a warrior Buddhist and I eat anything that runs away from me." But what I was trying to laugh with them about was all their image that they had of me. And I remember even when I was in counseling class, I was scared out of my mind. I thought, what am I doing? They're all talking about their emotions. And I said, this is not what we do in our culture. We just don't talk to people. And so I was really quiet. And then during the break, it was night classes, and someone walked up to me and did this. "What color is your belt?" And I said, "Black." And they said, what school did you get that from?" And I said, "J.C. Penney's." And then the other one was, "You look so wise and meditative. I just could see how you're just absorbing and how much wisdom you must carry." And I said, "I'm scared out of my mind in there. I'm scared because I don't know what to say. My family didn't, they only showed anger. I don't know what it's like to be like what you're doing. And what am I doing here?" And they were like shocked because they wanted me to be different and it preceded me. And so that's why earlier I had said to Uncle Don, "Where did you learn that from? Where did you learn from that I just wanted you to listen? Who told you that?" Because I don't want white people just to listen. I want you to listen, but I also don't want you to lose the best part of you. I want to find out what you're thinking, honestly, what you're feeling. I want to know if you're angry, you're upset, you feel disconnected, because I miss the very best parts of our relationship. However, I think that what we have shared with white folks is don't take up all the time. Just like women said, don't take up the whole agenda. Don't interrupt when you can sense that people are talking, and get back to them, or at least acknowledge that I'm having a hard time sitting here and I want to say something, but I know I need to wait, instead of just taking over and jumping in, which to me is very, very disrespectful when people do that. But I want that, just like I want the fullness from Lisa too. And to maybe even take a look at, maybe part of that hesitation is sometimes putting people of color on a pedestal too, that somehow we've arrived and that all white people don't deserve to talk or have space, which I think they should. Because I've learned a long time ago, everyone, women cannot achieve equality without men in this country. And people of color cannot achieve equality without whites. That it will require both of us coming together, however painful that is. And it means we cannot have equality until people are willing to share power and share resources. and to be more real. This is the hardest part. We have gone through 500 years of don't ask, don't tell. And I have a book right here that comes from 5,000 questions that people of color and whites. Here's the box of over 1,000 questions that whites and people of color are scared out of their minds to ask each other. Can you believe that, everybody? These are all grown adults. Grown adults. And guess what the number one question that white people were scared to ask people of color was? Take a guess, anybody. What was the number one question that people of color were afraid to ask people of color? White people were afraid to ask people of color. What do you think it was, Uncle Don? Come on, take a chance. Lisa.
What's your ethnicity? Although that's a much better way to say, where are you from?
Well, actually that's exactly it. The greatest fear was, what is your ethnicity? So by the way, you're absolutely right. That's amazing. And guess what I asked 600 graduating nurses, which are 99% white. So if that's your number one question, asking a person what their ethnicity is, show me how you do it. So a white nurse came up to me and she goes like this, what are you? And then I said, so what's missing, everybody? So they went on for like 15 responses. And I said, how about hello? My name is, and the other one was, none of them answered. It was, what's your ethnicity? That white people were not even used to asking or sharing their ethnicity. It's like we're the object of the lesson. And also, one thing that's really profound is that they never ask another white person that. Only people of color. And then one more thing I learned one day I was in Canada and this guy says, he's a Canadian Indian. And I said, so what's your name? George. I said, what kind of First Nation name is George? And he goes, that's my Christian name. And I said, really? Where'd you get it? He goes, when I was baptized, they gave me a Christian name. And this is what turned me to think. And I turned to all the white people and I said, all those who have been white, who are white, please stand up if you were baptized. And they all stood up. And then I said, how many of you were given Christian names? And not one. Only people of color. And by the way, we didn't know that we were the only ones. We thought everyone got one. Just like one black man said in my group, what? You aren't asked 4 pieces of ID when you bring your thing to a bank? You aren't asked to bring your birth certificate? No? He thought everyone did all of these things. And that's a world that is different. And today, all of this led up to part of this sharing. I would like to propose something else, Lisa, and I might be wrong, okay? That I don't want you to be ashamed or even go, I don't know why sometimes I get so abrupt. Sometimes I just say it. And a black woman said that in one of my workshops. She goes, I don't know why I'm so angry all the time. And I said, because something's still unfinished. You weren't born this way, just yelling at people when you came out. You might have been, I don't know. But I think it's when you aren't being heard, when you aren't being validated, when people aren't curious, when people don't want to get to know you, don't value what you have to say, is when it builds up. I think there's a source for our anger. There's a source for your defensive, you're not wanting to share this part, Chris. It didn't just come out of a vacuum. It's when you did open up and you saw what happened to you. It's when I opened up to share my Chinese name and my Chinese food that I saw what happened to me. And so I think that there's a reason that we forget. And I think that, do you know that most of the Chinese people who get beaten, do you know what their first question is, Lisa? What did I do to make you do that? What did I do to make you do that? And that's exactly, I think, what the slaves, when they first came here, said. Why are you doing this to me? What have I done? Why don't you see us as a human being? What did we do to make you not see us as a human being? Which is exactly what the Asian woman asked. Why are you hitting me? And I think maybe the more painful question, Uncle Don, to ask some of the people who hit Asian people is, what are you hitting? Who are you hitting? Someone you may see that's not a human being to you, a threat. And that dialogue is worth talking about. Where did you learn that from? A Jewish woman just recently said that she felt that Donald Trump was simply a 21st century version of Adolf Hitler. And someone said to her, tell us what you mean by that. And she said, because he's already laying down the foundation of words to make you afraid of a certain people. And in this case, Asians. In this particular case, Asians. To be afraid of them. That they have a disease that they're carrying. And I know that every one of you in this room has stereotypes of Asian people. I know that. And I have thousands of women, of elders, of whites, of Iranians, of blacks, and even of myself that I've run from for years. And by the way, one of the things I wanted to share with people is we have not yet talked about how many incidences where Black men and women have beat up Asian men, Asian women. It's a topic we don't even want to come close to. What is the relationships and relations between Blacks and Asians? And it's something that we're avoiding like the plague. And yet we both know that there's a huge dialogue about Asians and Blacks and our relationships and history with each other. Yeah. And the LA riots are a really good example. Yeah. I didn't know how to start today. In fact, I even asked Amitavi and Amani, what am I talking about today? In fact, in all of my life, I don't know how many times I've ever even written anything down, Chris. I think sometimes for me, I just begin with the first person and then see where it goes. And that's exactly how I started with Amitavi and Amani this morning, having the conversation. And I want you to see too, Lisa, how much it meant for me to see you. It was really very sweet and bittersweet at the same time to see you. And not only how much that you support Amani, but my connection to your family and how everyone means so much to me. And yeah, each of you were very unique to me today. So I'd like to ask you, as we are getting ready to close, what did you appreciate about today? What did you like about today? What did you learn about mindfulness today? Because see, I didn't want to give you a lecture about mindfulness. I wanted to actually have you see what it looks like. And because to me, it's a very relationship-oriented one. It's not an intellectual concept. So what did you notice about mindfulness today? Anyone? And I won't fall for that one. You can't put it into words. I'm not that ethereal or spiritual. Anyone? What did you appreciate about today? Chris, you almost look like you're getting ready to either fall for it or say something. I'm not sure which one.
Hopefully not fall forward. We'll see.
Okay.
I really appreciated this kind of intersection between mindfulness and consent. I think we got at a little bit. There's like dimensional listening framework that I've used in my work sometimes, where, you know, kind of content, feeling underneath it, what are the values underneath those feelings, and I think especially as and my flag might have given it away, especially as a Black person in this country, navigating this racist culture, oftentimes we want to obscure our true feelings and the values, and we just focus on content. Yeah. Because that's all I want to give you. And so and especially in a setting like this, where folks are coming from different backgrounds and different cultures and different cultural norms around that, what is pushy, what is rude, what is polite, what is digging, what is withholding, what is a lack of curiosity, and I think that all of those can be read in a single interaction, depending on where we're coming from. So yeah, I'm just sitting with that mindfulness and consent, and I really appreciate having the time to explore that with y'all today.
Yeah. And really, that was a moment for us, wasn't it? When you talk about the consent part. So I'm different than you are. I'm have a different perception of this, so that you weren't ashamed, you weren't isolated, you weren't labeled, but rather that there's a context, trying to be compassionate about that. Because I often felt like just because I didn't speak up does not mean that I'm not all that you think, all this other narrative, but there's a context for it. And I think that that's where I felt the connectedness between us, this respecting that part, because there's a story, a real important story of what it took for you to get to this room and to make it to this room. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I could see why you're so connected to these two guys. I feel like you seem like you're all very connected and there's a big thread here. You know, it's very beautiful. And it's also warriors is how I would describe each of you, but warriors who have gone through a great deal. So thank you. Anyone else? What was it like for you today?
I have something to share.
Oh, yes.
Hi, I'm going to turn my camera on. I've had it off for a little bit. I wasn't feeling so well.
Oh, good. Funny. Good to see
Hi.
you. I'm just happy or doing sculpture.
Hello. Yeah, I think I arrived when a little bit late. And so I feel like so nervous right now. But I think I was just so uncomfortable by what was happening, and I felt super dysregulated. It took me a while to calm down, and I just I spent part of this time in tears of listening to Lisa, and that moment I just felt like that was so brave, and everything that she was saying was so brave, and so I think what I'm learning, or what I appreciated and what I'm learning about this space that is here today, is this mindfulness with the uncomfortable thing. So I was like, oh, okay, are we moving on? But then it came back around, and you asked some questions to Uncle Don and Lisa, and kind of sat with these pieces for a little bit longer. And so that was really interesting, because yeah, I just wasn't sure. It's like we circled back to it and we stayed with it. We stayed with this thing until it could find its footing again, or its ease a little bit more, rather than just moving on. So yeah, just thinking about mindfulness in that way of like staying with something to connect with each other, and see what comes out of this sort of dysregulation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And I think that the subtext, what you're talking about, River, is that so oftentimes we don't pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this another unfinished conversation. And I remember, in the Western culture is to rush and complete and find solutions and wrap things up. And then the Buddhists always say, whenever you're in a really intense rush, slow down. And it sounds really silly, but it's true. Because the truth of it is, when you rush through things, you leave lots of debris, huh? We could have rushed through this today and left a lot of emotional debris. But in each moment, we took our time to develop the relationships, and then it deepened. Because all it took is one person to be offended. That, why'd you go by me? Then we'd be spending half the time doing that and wishing that we had talked about it. And I think it's also important for us, the rest of us males and men in the room, is to notice how important this was for River as a woman listening to Lisa and maybe even feeling and identifying, so that when we took time, it meant that I was important too. Can you hear that? So it would make it safe for me to be here. Yeah. Thank you so much, River. It's good to see you too. I wasn't sure if you were there or not. I remember Lisa said something about that, but I thought, well, I wonder why she's not here. Yeah. So thank you. Anyone else? What did you appreciate about today? What touched you? Okay, Lisa. Oh, I'm sorry. Mutabi?
I can. I was like,
oh, okay.
Okay. I'll go down. You can go. Look at that.
Yes. Uncle Don is learning the lesson of going next after someone else. Okay, so Amitabi, go ahead.
Well, I really want to actually mirror what River said. They actually hit right on the piece that felt really powerful in this process for me, which is the assertiveness of mindfulness, the like warriorship of mindfulness, the turning toward that's necessary in these practices, like within ourselves and within group process. Like, I feel like oftentimes, because mindfulness is connected to like Asian culture and like, people like put it onto this culture, that then it's like softened and it's made into this idea of like, well, you come with this gentleness and you like breathe through and you like lean away, you lean back, when actually the practice is a warrior's practice. It is like a practice of leaning in and like really noticing and not turning away and like breathing with. And so like really like appreciating like how that showed up in this like mindful conversation, and the real like fire that is present in circumstances where like mindfulness is being practiced. And so yeah, really appreciating that energy in this conversation.
Yeah. Uncle Don.
Well, I had a reminder that when I come off of a deep retreat like I did on Sunday, with all that suppression of ego, sometimes it jumps back. I have a friend that does silent meditation for months. She goes to Myanmar. Every time she comes back, she wants to talk and talk and talk and talk.
That tells you a lot about those retreats.
I realize that I have been a stand-in for a lot of other people.
Hmm.
And I hope that those in this group who don't realize that already will observe me over a longer period of time and will see that I was a bit stereotyped today, as well as making a mistake. I regret that that happened today.
Hmm. So you could see everybody how, as Uncle Don finishes, how much more that was missing in wanting to know more, huh? So each one creates another dialogue that could happen. I appreciate your honesty, Uncle Don. And I would, well, one of the people I most admire here is also Lisa, who's done a lot of this work. I would really encourage the two of you to have a conversation or with River, just because it's not always the responsibility of people of color, which sometimes it falls on us. And one of my old mentors used to say that is one of the greatest ways. I remember once this used two professors from a university said to me, "We just got this horrible call from this white guy about you, Winwa." And he just said, you know, you're anti-white and all of this. And so then they told me about this, and I'm so glad we came here today. And then they at the end they said, "How can we be an ally?" And I said, "I'd like you to call that guy back up, and I'd like you two to have a conversation, so that my life is safe, and so is other people of color." And so I think that it would be something that I would like the three of you to be open to having that dialogue with each other. Would you be open to that, Uncle Don?
Yes, perhaps one of the hosts of this group would be willing to broker that if
Yeah.
others are interested in doing that.
Would you be open to that, River?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I just, and would you be open to that, Lisa?
Yes, very much so.
Good. Great. And I could see all the rest of us guys over here just gave a sigh like, "Oh, I'm glad." Or you don't have to, but it's all part of a journey. Okay. And Lisa, what was it like for you today?
I very much wish that this was a few more hours because I like the cadence of it, the slow asking questions and allowing time to answer, and also the digging. And if we had more time, it would be really good to, you know, a lot came up about the intersectionality of so many things, and so I appreciated that.
And John, what was it like for you, and what did you appreciate about today?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what was shared about staying with a moment and the practice of that. And I think this question that you reflected to the group and maybe to me in the beginning too was, what is missing from what you're hearing? What is missing from what this person shared? And that feels like a nugget of reflection that I'm going to carry with me, is both in asking myself, like, oh, what was missing from what I was sharing? There was a lot that was missing, right? That I felt or experienced. And then just that practice of holding that in listening to others and witnessing others, what's missing. And also what I was hearing was, you know, also being mindful of the conclusions we jump to or that I jump to fill in those gaps for myself, and your practice of actually asking, and I guess the intimacy of that, the courage of that, and also what can get stirred up in that reaching out. So I appreciated the reflectiveness and the witnessing.
Amani, did you get a chance to share?
Not yet.
Okay, I didn't think so. Kind of looked like you did, but I don't know.
I mean, I've been sharing this whole time. So beautiful. Yeah. So how to distill all that I'm sitting with right now. I really appreciate both the emergent, like flowing into kind of the first thing that folks received was this, like, you having conversation with Mama Lisa across the Zoom screens, and we didn't really do a like, okay, here's what's about to happen, and we just kind of rolled into check-ins, and then the check-ins kind of turned into this like unpacking. And we're in conversation about kind of emergence and structure, and there are different folks with different needs. But what this brought up for me specifically was getting to witness the co-creation of a process in a really earnest way. And the like each moment of that, or many moments of that, getting kind of paused, slowed down like you do so masterfully, and getting curious together. And the ways that, like, what Chris brought and Chris's kind of response and way of orienting to the process, specifically for me as somebody who's a pleaser and as somebody who is hosting this, brought up like, oh no, something's wrong. And it was amazing to watch the beauty of both of y'all teach together and both of y'all learn together. And then that really helped me ground in the beauty, the magic, the essentialness of actually the tension points, and those being the places where, like, all the teaching is. And like, these are the places that we are strategically keeping and protecting what is most precious. We are also strategically holding on to the wound and like having to manage with so many different worlds from our own orientation and building however many bridges we have to the rest of the world. And just the amount of energy that goes into managing our interactions, and how in this culture, how fraught with power dynamic, with hierarchy that is, with all these unspoken and very explicit rules of how you do that, what you don't do that, of who has to follow those rules and how, and what rules are different. Like, it's just like this complex network that we're all navigating. And there's so much richness in everybody's practices, boundaries, innate ways of being, conditioned ways of being. And if we can actually forgive ourselves, forgive each other, know that we're gonna fucking get messy, do it wrong, trust ourselves, know that we have wisdom, that we can actually name what we need to name, that even if we are wrong, that we can be in a process together to figure that out together. It's just a beautiful glimpse at what is trying to happen, what needs to happen, on such a larger scale, with so much depth, complexity, and things that can polarize us and send us into the kind of warrior stance that's like going to war, rather than the warrior who is like finding peace and standing in peace. So yeah, I got to get a taste of that today, and be in practice with it myself, and witness beautiful practices in that from all of y'all.
I was thinking of something when you were sharing, Amani, was something that Amitabi had shared once, was in one of the role plays that we were talking about. But when I was asking you to write about the effect of racism on your life, and And you talked about how oftentimes that white people saw you through their lens and determined who you were by that lens and didn't see the possibility of who you were.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of two things I'd like to close today with you. And it was something that I have a book coming out called, if I can remember what it was, it'll come to me. It's one of those moments where you know what it is, but you forget. And it was one where I was simply, you can see the picture. It's one of these pictures I took. I'm just watching a stream. And this is what I wrote about mindfulness. Facilitating requires mindfully staying in the moment. As the group begins to unfold, be patient. Listen and allow for the flow of the room to move naturally. Follow each person who speaks as if you were watching a stream as it passes over the rocks and caresses the edges of the terrain. For each person creates their own story, moment by moment, from the moment they are born to the day that they die. And for those of you who told your truth today, and I was thinking about when we were really having this country having to face what makes it unsafe, what makes it racist, what makes it feel painful to live every day. And I was just so struck by the stories that have been coming out continuously. And I think part of it, we're hearing those because we've had to look virtually instead of the newspapers or someplace else. And so we've had to look at other people's stories. And so this is what I wrote about it, particularly during the time of George Floyd. Sometimes you can't believe it's happening when someone stands up and shares their story. At first, it surprises you that everyone, at first it surprises you that everyone, that everyone is saying this, and then you realize what they're sharing about isn't happening to just one person, but to lots of other folks who have been silenced or made to doubt themselves. The beauty of when it is finally spoken out loud is that it is so disarmingly honest, so real that you can't even touch it because it feels so fragile and rare. And when it is spoken purely from the heart, it resonates a certain kind of eloquence, because throughout history, it has always been known by one word: the truth. And I think that's what we had happen today. People told their truths. And we also discovered and went through the process of realizing and discovering and taking the time to realize sometimes why it is dangerous to tell the truth, what has kept us from telling the truth. And maybe in short, what we've all done today is what we walked each other home. We took the time to walk each other home. So I'd like to very much to acknowledge Amani and Amitabi for this incredible series that you've created, an organization. Let's give them a hand too, and thank you. And then also how appreciative it is for me to get to meet you, Chris, and meet you also, Uncle Don and River and Lisa once again. It's been quite an honor. And as you could probably understand, is the room did unfold today, one person at a time. And that's probably the best way it should happen. Because if you go too far ahead or too far back, you miss all the good stuff that's right in front of you. So thank you. And it was a pleasure to be with all of you, and quite an honor. And Lisa, it was really good to reacquaint and see you again. Very touched. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Hope you continue these conversations.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this very special, intimate container. Thank y'all for sharing so vulnerably. Yeah, let us know. Keep us in the loop, Uncle Don and River and Mama Lisa, about how we can support any conversations happening. Definitely weave in Lucas and Nasser too, and we can support that as well. Let us know what you need.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. I wish you all stay safe and silly. Okay.
Get it. Thank you so much.
Okay,
All right, with us.
Thank
All
you.
right, beautiful peoples. Yee.
Hey.
Bye.
Okay, blessings, y'all. Love you, Mama. Thank you so
Love
much
you too.
Mama
for
Lisa.
your voice.
Yee, look at you. Always. Bring that fire. Bring fire.
Yee.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It was so different not hearing all that much from you too.
I was having that moment too. I was like, Bonnie didn't share nothing. What?
Oh
It
man, it
was
was so hard to try to put it all in to 2 minutes at the end.
I noticed. I was like, Bonnie's like, let me sit this down. Okay, I'm gonna get it. Gotta get it. Gotta get it. Mm.
I also was peeing in the jar because I had to go so bad.
gonna get you some saw palmetto.
What does that do?
I don't know. It's supposed to help with your, what is that called? The the thing that
Capacity to be able to hold your pee
Okay.
makes
until you go to the bathroom.
Maybe less liters of tea right before sessions too.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Will we see you at the next one?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Ooh, Victor Lee shortly.
Little different energy.
Very different energy.
Okay. Love y'all.
Okay.
Love you too.
Yee. Hey,
Who's next? Who's next?
who's next? I might have to cut that peeing part out.
Oh no, you gotta keep the peeing part. You gotta keep the peeing. What you talking about? This is the part of
Good hippie universe, the benefits of working from home.
Exactly. Exactly.
People got to rewatch and be like, "Oh yeah, you can tell."
Right then. Oh, it's happening. It's happening. Okay.
No offense, don't mean to cross anybody's boundaries. Body needs, access needs. What you gonna do?
You didn't flash nobody.
That's
You was not inside the screen. You were not making all sorts of faces and all the things. So I think we're okay. You know, like-
All right, who's next?
Who's next?